Good evening, everyone. My name is Judy Kaiser. I am a member of the Jam and All Interfaith Board of Directors, and I am really thrilled to be in the company of so many wonderful people who are all peacemakers in your own ways. Large, small, daily, weekly, every moment. There is more peace in the world because of all of you, and I salute you and I thank you for giving us your time for this evening. This is the last of our three winter interfaith online roundtables in the series we call Choosing Peace in the Midst of Chaos. And this series was our first collaboration with another peacemaking organization. And we are so thrilled that we were able to do this with the Abrahamic Reunion, an international organization and team of spiritual peacemakers who, for several decades, has been dedicated to uplifting human consciousness and building peace in the Holy Land. And I'm also, we'll get to some introductions afterwards when the slides aren't being spotlighted, but I would like to make sure to introduce you to Reverend Todd Humphrey, who was speaking earlier. And Reverend Todd is our Zoom host for all of our roundtables, including this evening. And it's just always such a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much for what you do for JAM.
Thank you.
And you'll be hearing more from Reverend Todd. JAM and All Interfaith was founded shortly after 9/11 as an interfaith path to connect people through conversation and education to create peace, harmony, and understanding. In all our conferences and town meetings and parties and potluck dinners, lots of food, we always focus on dialogue, creating a safe space in which to be brave and vulnerable, to discuss ideas and ask questions, even the hard ones. In a few minutes, Reverend Todd will show a slide that shares the principles the JAM has developed to help create that safe space. And safe spaces are very important, particularly now, always, but particularly now, in a time when the turbulent events of this fall, or last fall, I guess, and the ongoing humanitarian crises around the world make it more important than ever to make space for the possibility of peace, to be a voice for peace. And Jam and All Interfaith is such a voice, and so is Abrahamic Reunion. We have a guest speaker, David Less, who will introduce our topic. Later, we will break out into small groups for 30 minutes of conversation and discussion. Then we will report back to the larger group. But first, I'd like to ask Laura Sue Wilansky, another member of the Jam and All Interfaith Board, to share a poem with us all. Laura Sue?
Thank you so much, Judy. That was such a beautiful description of JAM, and it's such a wonderful organization to be part of. I'm very happy to be here and to be invited to share this poem. This is called Red Sea, written by Aurora Levins Morales. We cannot cross until we carry each other. All of us refugees, all of us prophets. No more taking turns on history's wheel, trying to collect old debts no one can pay. The sea will not open that way. This time, that country is what we promise each other. Our rage pressed cheek to cheek until tears flood the space between. Until there are no enemies left. Because this time, no one will be left to drown, and all of us must be chosen. This time, it's all of us or none.
Thank you, Laura Sue. With that in mind, and with that spirit in our hearts, we start this evening with an introduction of our guest speaker, David Less. David Less is a global teacher of meditation conflict resolution, and interfaith dialogue for over 40 years. For over a decade, he has been the global dean of the Universal Worship, an organization in over 30 countries that honors the commonality in all religions and appreciates and respects the differences. He started promoting understanding rather than blame as a path to peace in the Holy Land in 2000 and was one of the founders of the Abrahamic Reunion shortly thereafter. It is my pleasure to invite David Less to share with us his answers to the following questions: how and why he chooses peace and what that looks like in his life, what are his greatest challenges, how he balances conflicting priorities, and what sustains him in the choice of peace.
Wow, if I really had answers to those questions, I think I'd be a prophet or something. It's a really difficult time. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the difficulties first. The real difficulty, as I see it, is that everyone has their story. And that story justifies whatever actions the people take. And it's not so easy to change the stories. I wish I could sit here and say, oh, I've done this and this and this, and everything's worked. We've tried many different things, and a few of them have worked. And I think for a peacemaker, you need a lot of patience. You need a lot of faith in the goodness of human beings, regardless of heinous actions that we see occurring. And you need, or I need, I should say, to really believe that peace is possible. In times of difficulty, it gives the human being, it seems, some comfort to dip into the negative, to blame the other. And that actually deepens the story that we tell ourselves. And to be a peacemaker, what I've learned is to give up all the stories. I had a wonderful mentor in peacemaking. His name was Ilyas Jabor. And Ilyas lived in Israel, and he was a Palestinian, Arab, Christian, Israeli, seventh generation peacemaker. And I used to sit and just listen to Ilyas, and he would just talk and talk and talk, but he always came back to the same theme. And I hope this is not too graphic to begin, but I really need to say what he always said to me. He said, look, people think peace is the absence of problems. Peace is not the absence of problems. Where human beings live together, there are going to be problems. There are going to be things to work out. There are going to be differences. There's going to be grudges. Whether it's a few people, a village, a city, or a country, or countries. I said, so Ilyas, what do we do? What does a peacemaker really do? He said, you know, from the outside looking in, people think that, oh, we sit at tables and we discuss different political things. He said, no. And he said, listen, always keep one theme at the back of your mind and keep that theme on the front of your heart. And what is that? He said, always stop the killing. Always stop the destruction. He said, it doesn't matter how you get there, but get there. Get to the point of dialogue, because there is no peace until there is dialogue. And I've learned and listened to what he said. And I had another mentor in Israel, a man named Rabbi Menachem Fruman. Rabbi Fruman was one of the first settlers.
I'm over here
Now,
stroking my
if you
dick.
know,
I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny up, man. I'm a freak.
could somebody mute that person, please? Thank you. So back to Rabbi Fruman. Rabbi Fruman was an Orthodox rabbi, and he was one of the first settlers. And I'm sure you all know, or I hope you all know, that the settlements in Israel are a cause of great conflict between Jews and Muslims and Palestinians and Israelis. Before I continue, I want to remind everybody, almost 25%, I think now it's 23.5%, of the citizenry of Israel are Arabs. Israel is not 100% Jews. And somehow a way had to be found to bring these two cultures that have a history of trauma to understanding each other. So what did Rabbi Fruman do? He had his settlement, and he said, look, I believe that I have a right to live here. He said, but, and this is kind of radical, I hope you don't run away, but if you do, text me and just say, hey, I don't agree with that, or we can talk about it later. He said, look, I want to live in this area because I believe it's holy ground. He said, but I don't have to be an Israeli. I could be governed by the Palestinians. If it's their ground, fine. Well, that was a pretty radical point of view. And yet Reb Fruman was one of the most respected rabbis in Israel. And he and I were friends. One day I was in Israel and he said, hey, David, I'm going to see a friend of mine who's dying. And David, you're a good Sufi, so maybe you can help him make the passage. And I said, okay, who is it? He said, Yasser Arafat. And I hesitated for a moment. I've heard many things come out of Reb Fruman's mouth. And I said, you're good friends with Yasser Arafat? If you don't know who that is, he was the head of the PLO and ultimately the PLA. And he made the Camp David Accords, some of you might know about, with Menachem Begin. Anyway, I thought for a moment, and I said, let me think about it overnight. And I thought very personally, I said, well, look, I know if I, who am not an Israeli citizen, go see Yasser Arafat, that the Israelis who watch carefully will not let me back into Israel. And I want to come back into Israel. And then I thought, yeah, but it's an opportunity. And really, in a way, it might help. So I called Menachem back and I said, okay, I'll do it. He said, it's too late. He's gone. So back to peace. We have, or I had, I'm getting rid of some of them. I had many concepts about peace. And what we ended up doing in the Abrahamic Reunion, which has been really effective, is one, we're not political. I really don't believe that politicians are always interested in making peace. And I know it sounds cynical, but I take it to a deeper level. I understand deeply that the people need peace, that it really benefits the people to have peace. And so I also understood in the Middle East that in the midst of the two societies trying to live together, not so successfully, there was a separation that was naturally created that was not easy to overcome because both sides had their stories. And they had them, of course, historically, but they also had them culturally. In the West, most of our decisions are situational. In other words, there's a situation, we look at it, we try to come up with a solution. That's kind of our culture. In the East, and make no mistakes about it, the Arabs are an Eastern culture. In the East, culturally, people settle things relationally, not situationally. So, for example, I spoke about Ilyas Jabor, about the peacemaker. He practiced something called sulha. Sulha was the traditional Arabic peacemaking process. And what did it mean? It meant when two clans or two families had a fight. And out of that fight, somebody lost their head and killed somebody on the other side. Or maybe it had to do with marriage, or maybe it had to do with theft, or whatever it had to do with. What would happen is the clans would come together, everybody, not just the people involved, everybody would come together and they would stay there until they found a solution. Now, the solution might be, well, this clan has to pay this clan. Or if somebody was murdered, then the murderer might have to take the place of the murdered person for 10 years. Or, I mean, there were wild ideas, but they were ideas that led to what? Stop the killing. Somehow find a way to cease the violence. Don't let it grow into a story that will bring more killing. Was it always successful? Of course not. But it was a way. And that's the way in the East. It's familial, it's tribal. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way or in a primitive way. It was a cultural thing where they recognized that the relationship between people was so critical that peace must be kept almost at all costs. Our way is different. It's situational. Somebody hurts somebody, you take that person who hurt somebody and you deal with that individual. Whereas in that culture, it was different. People saw each other as a whole. So it was the whole family. It was the whole clan. And that was different. I realize I'm getting away from all of those beautiful questions that you asked me. So 24 years ago, I was in Israel, and through a series of circumstances, I met some of the peacemakers there. I met Christian peacemakers, Jewish peacemakers, Muslim peacemakers, and Druze. Druze is the fourth religion in the Holy Land. And Druze peacemakers. And they were all so beautiful. And there was just one problem. They didn't work together. They didn't know each other. They were still peacemakers in their community, but they were limited by their story, with exceptions, of course. And so what we did, myself and a few friends, we just brought everybody together. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have an organization. We didn't have an ism. We weren't selling anything. We didn't charge anything. We just brought everybody together. And we said, Let's see what happens. And there were always the limited situations. So in the first meeting, one group had to eat separately. They didn't want to eat with the other group because the food might be different, and and on and on and on. And so I very graciously said, fine, let's do what we need to do so that we can get on with it. This is kind of a footnote, but the second meeting we had, everybody said the same thing. This group has to eat separately. I said, no, we can't do it. If we have to, let's just not eat for 2 days so that we can all sit next to each other. Now, in the Middle East, the one thing you never say except during Ramadan is you're not going to eat. And I learned that early on. And it created, oh, what? And the result was people ate together. And once the wall was down, then everybody got used to, of course, we're going to eat together. So peacemaking in the Holy Land, and I've lived in India for a long time. Peacemaking there is different. But peacemaking in the Holy Land is an art. It's definitely not a science. And you have to come from your heart at all times. You have to do the homework, see the barriers that are there. You have to hear the stories of everybody. So I spent so much time listening and biting my tongue and keeping my mouth closed. And I really thought we were making progress. What was our theme? Well, there was a PhD thesis called the connectivity hypotheses. And basically, it was very simple. If you have communities and you have people with different stories, just bring them together and let's see what happens. Anything can happen. And later, I spoke to somebody else in the Holy Land who said, yes, I know that hypothesis, and there's another one, which is bring people together so that the narrative can change. Basically, they're saying the same thing, but what we did is we started to bring people together. Who did we bring together? We brought together families. And at that time, we could bring in Palestinians over the border into Israel. It's difficult for Palestinians. They had to get a permit to come in, and we helped get permits. And we could take people from the West Bank and bring them 28 miles west, and they could see the ocean. They lived 28 miles from the Mediterranean. They were never able to see it because they couldn't get a permit. And right away, that changed things. And instead of just having Palestinians, we had Palestinians and Israeli Jews and Christians and Druze. And everybody had to eat together. And everybody began to talk together. And the stories began to diminish. We have somebody on our board now, a wonderful woman called Anat Lev-Or. And Anat's parents were Israeli citizens, her grandparents were there. And she started to work with our dear friend Ghassan Manasra, who is the director, the international director of the Abrahamic Reunion, an incredibly heartfelt human being. Well, she started to work with him making peace in Israel, which wasn't very popular 30 years ago. To make a long story short, she finally told her family, and they were just horrified. You're doing what? You're going to an Arab house in Nazareth, and you're talking to them, and what if they poison you? What if they kill you? And on and on. And I've heard this from both sides, from all sides. I wish there were two sides. There's many sides. Anyway, what she did was quite astounding. She basically talked them into getting into their car and drove them to Ghassan's house. And she said, come in and meet the family. Every time I tell this story, I want to cry. So I have to take a moment to take a breath. The family came in, And Hassan's wife, Layla, is a wonderful cook, incredible human being. The family came in and they were fed and they didn't know what to do. And they just sat and they talked, and Ghassan's family made music, and then they sang a little bit. Suddenly, they realized the fundamental, obvious realization: these are not Arabs or Jews or Muslims or Christians, they're people. Can we do this on a large scale? Well, we've done it with families, we've done it with large groups of women, and we've done it with young people, and we've done it with clergy. Does it always work? No, it doesn't always work. I don't want to go over. Can I have a few more minutes? I don't know who's in charge, but if that's all right, just a few more minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That simple story has been the basis for the Abrahamic Reunion. We've had ups and we've had downs. Now, what about the war? Because we know people on all sides. And we are, I might say, trusted on all sides. We've never taken anything from any particular interest group. We've always kept ourselves really clean. We have a very limited budget. We're not in it for the individual wealth that it might bring us, which sadly is true in some organizations. We didn't follow that route. We've all been burned too badly by that. We've seen horrible things, and when you see bad things, you don't want to repeat them. So what we did when the war broke out is, first of all, we came back to the basic point, which is, I need to make peace in myself. I can't call myself a peacemaker if I'm blaming other people. So all of us had to really make sure, and it wasn't easy, as you might guess. There are difficulties on all sides. We had to make sure that we were clear. I remember Ilyas telling me, he would say, look, people see conflict the way they see a football game. There's this side and there's this side, and who do I root for? And he said, that doesn't make peace. That just continues the old narratives. So all of us had to go into this position of not taking a side. Look, there are tremendous injustices being committed by all sides. But if we stay there, we will never be able to radiate the vibration of peace that needs to hit the dome of the universe, so to speak, and come back and touch the hearts of people. I've seen hardened people change in a moment because the energy of peace finally got through and touched them. How do I deal with it? How do I cope with it? There's a lot of disappointments, especially now. You know, I'd be promised, oh, we're going to have a ceasefire on this day or that day, and then one side or the other would not sign the agreement at the last minute, and you know, and I just must have faith in the goodness of human beings, regardless of the really heinous actions that are taken, and I must stop myself every day, whether through prayer or meditation, and make sure that my heart is clean, that I'm not blaming. I'm wishing, but I'm not blaming. And then I must ground, this is what I do, ground my desire in action. What can I do in this world at this time? What can I do? Not just to make me feel good, what can I do to listen to that still small voice that comes from within? What can I do to promote peace, to promote the belief in peace? And once I start looking, I don't have to look very far. everything starts to come to me, as it will come or does come to all of you. How can I help in the process? You know, for many, many centuries, we counted on religion to promote the ethics, the morality. Now there's a shift. People are becoming spiritual, but not religious. You all, I'm sure, know the figures that change in demographics. Well, we need to make sure that both the religions and the spiritual communities are promoting the ethics, the morality that brings peace. Right now, that's not happening, but we're moving towards it by meetings like this, by gatherings like this, by the wonderful things you said. Let's go into breakout rooms and talk about it. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? Let's do it. So that's what we're doing. What's possible? Peace is possible if we have patience. Peace takes patience. Peace takes absorbing disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Peace takes never losing hope. Peace takes feeling, I mean, this is me now. I feel the pain in my heart daily. I know the suffering that's going on there. I know the trauma that's being created, that it's going to take us a long time to heal. Nevertheless, I have to stay true to my own heart, to my own inner knowledge, my own inner guidance, and share what I can. And at the same time, I am really open to new ideas and new beliefs. And I have ultimately faith. When I lived in India, my teacher, my guru there, never called God God. He always said supreme intelligence. And he said, you know, people have trouble having faith in God, but they don't have trouble having faith in supreme intelligence. So I have faith in supreme intelligence, and I trust that it's going to uplift us all. Yeah, these are tough times. It's tough. There are 31 wars going on the planet right now. More? Are you shaking your head more?
I'm sad about it.
Yeah,
Right.
so am I, on a heartbreakingly daily basis. And yet, to be a peacemaker, you have to find your joy. Without joy, it becomes overwhelming, overbearing. At the same time, yeah, of course I cry throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's just really hard. To know what's going on is just really hard. But that's our battle, our personal battle, to understand that there are human beings and we're all at many different steps of evolution, not higher or lower, but we just see things so differently.
I love
And
what
it's
you said.
our duty to love them all. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
loved
maybe
what
I
you
should
said
stop.
about
You know, I could go on for hours. And I feel like
And-
all of you beautiful people are therapy for me. So thank you for being here. And, you know,
and we
never forget, none of us are ever alone. Never. So
thank you. Thank
the
you.
cry goes out. And I appreciate that you let me go over my time a little bit. Thank you. Bless you all. Bless us all. And pray
Yes.
for the peace. There's a wonderful song. Pray for the peace of Israel. Pray for the peace of Ishmael. Pray for the peace of all the world. All the world will live in peace. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh, what a warmth I feel in my heart. And I hope that the the tears are not only for sadness but also for joy, because it is truly a joy to know that we are in the company of leaders and partners in keeping the faith, right, towards the possibility of peace. So thank you so much, David Less, for sharing from your heart to ours. And now, Reverend Todd, will you take us into our breakout room so that we can continue the conversation with each other?
Absolutely, I certainly will. Welcome back, everyone. We've had everyone now return to our main group, and I'm so delighted that you're with us tonight. Thank you all again for participating in our breakout. I meant to say this before. Standalin, who was one of our moderators, messaged me, and she had a suggestion that I just love, and I'm going to use it for the rest of tonight. And I'm going to invite our team that puts these together. Let's not call them breakout rooms anymore, and let's call them breakthrough groups, because we are breaking through all sorts of ideas and limitations in beliefs and challenges as we break through to be the change that we want to see in the world. And so Standalin put in who was going to report from her group, but I've had so many things come up in the chat that I'm just going to ask whoever was going to share from Standalin's group to unmute. And then I'm going to spotlight you and you can share for us.
Well, we had a wonderful group, and it was a breakthrough group. It really was. And David Les spoke from his heart, and it just felt so beautiful to all of us. And we had a lot of things to say, but we came up with this one little nugget here that said, listen with a compassionate air and respect the story of all peoples.
Wonderful.
That's
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much, Jane. We appreciate you sharing. Annie, I'm going to get you to go ahead and unmute and share from your group.
Hi, I'm Annie, and we had 4 people in our group, and basically one of the things that we all spoke about was people sticking to their story, and how when people stick to the story, they can't really listen to other people's stories because they're so engaged in their own story. And so we did speak a lot about sticking to your story and how you kind of have to let that go to let other stories filter in so you can really listen to the other people. And when you start listening, that's when you just start getting closer to other people, and people know when you're listening and when they're not listening. So I think that was a big part of what we spoke about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Annie, for sharing for your group.
Sure.
And thanks for participating. What a great takeaway. I am now going to invite Avi to unmute yourself and share from your group, if you would.
He's muted.
I can't even find Avi on here. Oh, it's under Allison. That's why. There we go. Is this right? There we go. Hi.
Okay, I think hi. Yeah, we've got a bonus person here because we're here together. We had a very thoughtful discussion, and it was hard to get really concise. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a run-on sentence here, but approaching the world with the notion that peace is a possibility. And with that possibility of peace, we can hold space for one another so we can listen to each other and hear each other's stories in order to come together through conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Avi. Chris Drum, if you would unmute now, I am going to ask you to report from your group.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. Well, I couldn't get anybody to report for my group, so I'm reporting for my group, which was a really wonderful conversation, and I hope I do the group justice. So, we talked a lot about how it's really difficult to give up and recreate a story that's based in trauma and fear, and that for us to do our own work to heal trauma and fear is an important piece, like for our own beliefs to shatter, so that we can take on a new story, so we can see the possibility of peace. And that by sitting with others and really working through the conflicts is one of the ways that we are able to create peace, because everybody has a story, and everybody's story is hard to change, and that sitting with others is really the way to change it.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, Chris. Now I would like to invite Fran Kraft. Fran, if you will unmute yourself and share from your group. Hey, Fran, good to see you.
It's good to be back. It's been a while. And it's been a while since I was a facilitator, so I forgot to assign a reporter. And we had some new people, and it was a great conversation. And one of the things that we came up with was we need to focus on our similarities and celebrate them and get to know each other that way. That was our nugget.
Thank you so much. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Fran. And finally, Zev, are you available to unmute and turn on your camera?
Yes.
Hi. Welcome.
Hey, everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I feel like there's, it's gonna be some crossover with the stories and stuff, which is fine. But we had one that was kind of to do with, what some of the other people have said, which been very eloquent, which is ours was the road to peace is about letting go of our stories and the attachment that the other is wrong, and to listen to where there is commonality. The goal of letting go is to allow compassion in the conversation, and then by doing so, we can see where our stories can unite.
That's beautiful, Chris. Zev, thank you so very much. Wonderful takeaway, and attachment. That'll preach. Too many attachments. So thank you so much. And finally, I want to invite Chris of the Abrahamic Reunion to unmute, and he's going to share their takeaway. And Chris, you also, I think, want to extend an invitation that I just read in the chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd. Yeah, so we had a really lovely conversation in our group, and yeah, there were 3 of us. We too talked about stories and many other things that you all contemplated. The nugget we came away with is get out of the way and let go of the ego. Stop and listen to create relationships. Look to the good in everyone that you encounter. Remember the story of the world becoming one people, and feel the pull of the future is stronger than the push of the past.
Wow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, and I forgot one group. Opal, I need you to unmute for me. Hey, friend. You are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. We had an amazing California-Florida partnership. Excellent discussion. So many nuggets, but we concentrated on the trauma. We honed in on the trauma, and to use some of our speakers' words, we understand that rarely does trauma allows peace, but it's important that we get above the clouds of trauma, because we do believe peace is possible as well. And the other thing that we thought about for the individuals is, yes, there is hurt, there are disappointments, there's pain, but we need to be resilient so that we can walk that path to peace. So yes, we talked about looking at the trauma, understanding it's there, but opening up ourselves so that we can become resilient. And there are examples. We use the civil rights movement, period of enslavement, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa. So we do believe that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Opal. So finally, I want to say thank you once again to everyone who participated. And I'm going to turn this right back over now to Judy and to David.
As usual, the collective wisdom informed by the collective love of participants in this interfaith roundtable never disappoints and always exceeds what I imagine can come out of these conversations. Just beautiful. And for me, there was an image talking about the pain and the trauma and the attachment to stories and how painful it can be and how difficult it can be to imagine something different. I thought about how there's a magnet on my refrigerator. It says, "It's the end of the world," says the caterpillar. "It's the beginning," says the butterfly. Caterpillar is in such pain. Caterpillars have to dissolve to become butterflies. And that's not an insignificant thing, but I heard in the spirit of these groups that there is pain, yes, and we have to keep focusing on and putting our attention to the peace and the beauty that come after the pain. So just marvelous. And again, many thanks to David Less for opening our minds and our hearts so that we could come up with these beautiful nuggets. Really, you created the foundation for us. And I thank you. And again, thank you to all of you for participating. And we would love to have more people help us plan future events because, again, we've seen the wisdom of the group. This is crowdsourcing at its best. And we would love your help and your participation. So if anyone has ideas for future events they would like to see Jam and All Interfaith undertake, and if you're willing to put your energy into it with us, we really invite you to be part of the future with us. And of course, we invite you to join Jam and All Interfaith. $20 a year is nothing for the absolutely wonderful experiences that come out of being part of this group. So there's plenty of information in the chat about how you can do that. And also, I would like to invite you all to reach out to Abrahamic Reunion. And there will be a slide also about AR's website and how you can get in touch with them and be part of their amazing work. This is truly inspiring. And while we're talking about Abrahamic Reunion, I'd like to invite Chris Miller to unmute and give us a quick update on Abrahamic Reunion's peacemaking activities, and also to put your email in the chat, Chris.
Sure. Thanks so much, Judy. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you all again and to hear all these incredible takeaways from the discussion groups, the breakthrough groups. I like that. That's gonna take. So yeah, we have one of our big events tomorrow morning, actually. It's called the Multi-Faith Iftar Dinner. It's a Ramadan dinner, breaking the fast of Ramadan. And the big event is in Jerusalem this year. We do have 3 of them, actually. One in a location to be determined, and one that just happened tonight in the north, in a Druze village, which was a really beautiful event as well. So I put that link in the chat earlier. Everybody is welcome to join and live stream. We're going to Zoom. We'll talk about why the iftar is important, why we've done it since 2006 to build peace and community, and to break bread together, to sit together, to discuss together, and get to know each other, just like this group is all about. So it's very similar to what Jam and All does. So yeah, we have that going on, and we'll have an online iftar as well later in the month. So reach out to me if you have questions.
That's great. Thank you very much. And as we said before, Jam and All is following the world religions, traditions, celebrations of March into April. And I believe that there's a slide about that with the upcoming events. And that's enough of the housekeeping. Now I would like to ask David Less. You might want to take a picture of this slide because it won't stay forever. And then I would like to ask David Less to take us out with his impressions and his closing remarks for this wonderful evening together.
Thank you. I find that when I let my heart lead and my reason follow, the results are remarkable. And when I get caught by my own limitations and let the mind lead and hope that the heart will follow, the results seem to have no soul, no life. But living from the heart is really trying to live a prayer 24 hours a day, knowing that I'm going to fail, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. And what I've learned, and what I think is so beautiful about your group, is I've learned that there's a difference between listening with the ears and listening with the heart. And when I listen with my heart, it keeps my mouth shut, but my heart open, and life seems to uplift. And really, we're here to know each other, to know our differences. It's the joy of the infinite God to know everything through everybody's eyes and ears in the whole world. Because we are the temple of God, and God is the worshiper in our temple. So thank you again. I pray for peace, and I'm sure you all do. And I pray that there's joy in our life, there's truth in our life, and that really we experience deep levels of love. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to all. And this concludes our last of this fantastic winter series of Choosing Peace in the Midst of Chaos. And I invite you all to unmute and express your thanks to each other all at once if you want, because there's a lot of joy in these Zoom rooms here.